Well, thanks for the honor, Nate. I really appreciate it. And but I also have to inform you in that same breath that Frank Welch would not obey those rules, and we could not do a 2-minute. Everything has to be done in odd numbers, so it makes 10 to 3. Okay, and it was incredible working for Frank. Not only a Texas legend, but just being around the man was learning so much about life. And and in that office as a young man, we still hand drew then, and so it was a culture of drawing, designing, building, making, focus on details, materiality, what it meant to live in this environment. Some people call that regionalism, but it's really just living in environments that we have. And so Frank was an incredible teacher in that way. He was more like, kind of like the office professor. And that was great because I'd worked in other offices where, it was not like that. And but after Nate asked me to do this, I did a little reflection about, Frank taught us, gave us a lot of tools and things to be good architects. But the main thing about Frank and being and knowing with him over extended amount of time is that he taught us how to have a life in architecture, and he showed us that way through not only always talking about design and drawing, but books, music, movies, talking, just experiencing together. And, and what an incredible life that's given me today. So Frank, grateful for that life in architecture. You've given so many. And with that, I'll give you 2 minutes back. Thank you, Mayor.
Hello, everybody. Good to be here. Very good to be here. Back here.
Good to be back because we were here almost exactly 15 years ago. It's hard to believe, but we spoke in 2009 in January, so it's about 14 and a half years. So we decided to call our talk today Reflections of the Past 15 Years, because it is amazing to think that all this time has passed since the last time we were here. Miguel, your daughters were not even born yet.
You're right.
He has a 13-year-old, no? Right?
13.
So it is, and that's the oldest one. So it is an opportunity to reflect into what we discussed last time. So the first thing that we did is to basically recreate what a famous philosopher from Spain called Unamuno did when he was the president of the Universidad de Salamanca, the oldest university in Spain. And he was in exile for many years because of his political views. They put him in jail. They sent him to a remote island. He was out for many years. And when he came back to give his class again after he was restored as the president of the university when the political climate changed, he started his class saying, como decíamos ayer, like we were saying yesterday, like if nothing has happened. Nothing had happened, right? So we're going to start the same way. Como decíamos ayer, so what we did is we looked at the last slide of our presentation in 2009. And this was the last slide. And we're going to continue with this slide as the first slide of this presentation. And the interesting thing is that we revisited this quote, and this quote was published in the Times in London after we won that award that Eurico mentioned in the Architectural Review. So they were reflecting on the three winners. So Fujimoto and Anne Heringer were the other two winners. So when the story came about the award, this architectural critic said that this was what he thought he saw in the work that was being awarded, our work and these two other architects. And we read this again, and it feels like it's almost exactly the thing that can guide our work for the next 15 years. So he said, like slow food, this is about local produce that tastes damn good. It's about that hard to define idea, integrity. Architecturally, it means back to basic building. providing beautiful shelter, addressing human needs with architecture that has longevity and presence, undeniably modern, but also showing that a human hand has been somewhere near it. So when we look at this, we finish with this and we realize that these 15 years that we have spent, basically, we have had the same goals as this quote says. We're trying to make the same thing that this quote says, providing beautiful shelter, addressing human needs, and doing it in a way that is responsible, like Eurico said. So we are about the same size that we were back then. We have made the clear decision that we don't want to grow beyond something that we can manage the projects, Miguel and I, with very hands-on involvement. And we have done also something significant, which is to publish our first monograph. And the first monograph is a very good opportunity to reflect on the work, 20 years of work in this case.
You heard that right, the first. So I think he's thinking of a second one.
Yes, but we're not going to wait 20 years. We're going to wait 10 years. So, this one was supposed to be after 10 years, but it took 10 years to find the time to do it. So we ended up doing 20 years of work. But it is true. We're going to do another one, Miguel, I promise, but we will not take that long. So the title is Building a New Arcadia. And this is an opportunity to reflect on something that has been very important for us in our work. And so when we think about Arcadia is this mythical place that is very ingrained in the American dream and the idea of how people from all over the world came to the Americas and thought that Americas provided a beautiful place to live close to nature. So the notion that America was a dream for a lot of people of an opportunity, but the connection to the land was very important. And so that idea of living close to nature was very, very much part of the last project that we show in that lecture. This is the last project that we show, the bridge that also Eurico mentioned. And so this book brought us back to visit some of the projects that we had done, and it was great to go back to some of the projects and see how nature, that dialogue between nature and our architecture has been evolving. So the vegetation has changed, but the bridge is still there, light, simple, the way we did it, and it's already approaching 20 years. So it's great to see these projects and reflect on that relationship with nature, which is still very much a guiding principle of our work. So when the book came out, some of the architectural critics and comments that came about the book talk about that. So they talk about how the lenses of nature and the relationship of our work with nature was something that everybody was seeing as part of what the book was conveying. And this obviously has to do with the place that we ended up working from, Austin. So the city of Austin is a particular place that has a very strong connection with nature. And this is something that we are seeing as a beautiful advantage to be able to work in that dialogue with nature. And it's the nature of this type of city. It's what we call a landscape city. It's a city that is very different to the city, for example, where I grew up. This is Madrid. So you can see that this is a compact city, this is a landscape city. So the relationship, the DNA is radically different. Rosa, my wife, that is somewhere there, and I have an apartment that is a little to the right of this image, not very far from this image. We love Madrid, we love Austin. They're very different. We cannot pretend that one is the other. There's always that obsession with taking sides. People say, what's better, Madrid or Austin? We say, we love both places. We spend the summers there, we travel when we can, we have a place in Madrid, we have a place in Austin. Austin is not very similar to Madrid, but is more similar to other cities in the Americas. For example, Tikal. When you go to Tikal, you say, well, this is the photo that I take on my way to home every day from my office, that is our office, that is 8 minutes. Miguel can walk to his office, to his house from our office. I drive 7 minutes, and this is what I see on the way home. And it reminds me of Tikal, because it's basically these buildings going above the canopy, and this is very much an example of that landscape city.
There's a city under that canopy.
Exactly. So people say, what is that? And it's the city. It's not a park. That's the city, right? So, and we realize that this connection with nature is very much prevalent all over the Americas. So when we travel, and we travel a lot, and we love to travel all over Latin America, you go to Machu Picchu, which happens to be the place where I asked my wife to marry me. She's there. We're still 28 years later, right? We're still married. That's the sacred stone in Machu Picchu. So imagine, like, in our Western way of thinking, how alien the notion of a sacred stone is. This is basically saying this stone is sacred. The material is sacred, and this stone is sacred because it's reproducing the sacred mountain to the east. So the architecture, what they did was very much reflecting what the sacred was for them. The sacred was connected to nature. So the sacred surrounded them. So human beings were surrounded by the sacred, the mountains, the water, the sky, the planets. So there was a sense of sacredness in everything that humans build because they were trying to integrate with that. So and I'm a big fan of pre-Columbian architecture. When I travel to all these places, I see the incredible effort to build those pyramids is nothing more than an effort to integrate themselves in nature. And there's a desire to basically to respond to the fact that if they didn't do it, they thought that nature could get back to them. So they knew something that we now are realizing, that if we don't take care of nature, nature can hurt us. And there's a sense of awareness of what you do that you need to be careful with, because if not, nature is going to eventually make you pay. So they had an integration with nature that is beautiful. In a way, we're coming back full circle, where they were doing this systematically in North, Central, and South America. In Taos, you see the same thing. The whole layout of this town is based on integrating themselves around the sacred environment of the sacred mountain, where the water comes from, that crosses the river, and you put a mass here. So everything was laid out to connect with nature. That's a beautiful thing. Western cultures have moved us away from that. So when you think about the Greek architecture, remove the gods from nature and became humans, and all of a sudden the attention when monotheist religions came, it was completely nature became secondary. So the models of architecture became models of a self-referential discipline. So when you think about the Supreme Court of the US, it was built at the same time that Frank Lloyd Wright was building Falling Water. And Frank Lloyd Wright was going nuts that the Supreme Court was built according to models from Europe rather than models from the Americas. So that connection with the landscape was a very American thing that is very much guiding the work of modern architects like Frank Lloyd Wright, like Fay Jones, like Luis Barragan in Mexico, or like Oscar Niemeyer in Brazil. So these were modern architects. They were doing modern architecture, but their architecture was very much in dialogue with nature and the place where they were at. And they saw that as a very unique aspect of their work. It was not like an accident. It was very much essential to how they see their work. So we see our work connecting with that tradition. And that tradition is very much about how we try to make architecture that is in dialogue with nature. And so that's one of the things that we see in architecture. We see it also in the way the cities operate. So again, if we think about Tikal, the city functions very differently. It's an adaptation to nature in the sense that the density of Tikal in the 7th century was the same as Austin today. Single family houses under the canopy with big buildings breaking through the canopy. Radically different than the model of a European city like Madrid. The DNA has nothing to do. When you look at Madrid in those times, it was a city that it was chaotic, it was organic, order was very hard to get by, so they would create a plaza as an attempt to create order. But when the Spaniards came to the Americas, they said, no, when we go to the Americas, we're not going to build cities like the ones we come from. This is very unusual for human beings. Human beings normally try to replicate what they know. When they came here, they said, no, we're going to do cities that are much more orderly, are going to be able to spread into nature, and the grid became the way to bring that order. There was a very simple diagram, a plaza, public space, and a grid that can expand. And so the cities that they built all over Latin America were like this. Curiously enough, in North America, it happened the same thing. Austin is an Anglo city, and the cities of Anglo-America, like the ones of Spanish America, also follow the grid. And they were also open. That's a very radical difference. European cities were walled off, so they were very, very dense because they were protecting themselves against enemies. They were not the case in the Americas. American cities were always open and spreading in the landscape. So when you think about what happens with a city like this, Austin, basically when you zoom in and you look, there's single-family houses since their inception, because they could live with that room and that space. The same thing in the cities in Latin America. And when you have this kind of fabric, all of a sudden trees grow and you have a fantastic place to live as an urban forest. And it's very good for many other reasons. So living in this type of city is a very, very important aspect of our work. And so, for example, Raul Miró has this quote saying, Miró Rivera architects building a new Arcadia engages nature and the city in a remarkable conversation. That's one of the things that we try to do in the book, and we'll explain a little bit of few of the things of how we did it. So how to live in this forest. I'm going to let Miguel talk about it because this is his house. So these are trees that are beautiful, and so Miguel enjoys this tree every day.
Yes, I mean, this is a house from 1904, a bungalow in the Clarksville area. And what we try to do is keep the house as it is. I mean, nowadays, I'm part of a downtown a group called the WANA, or West Austin neighborhood, that we try to work closely to preserve these houses that they're getting demolished. And but there is a way, this is a sample we use, there's a way of how you can keep the context and add in a new way by protecting these houses. So that's what that is. So it's a beautiful, one of the things of Austin that I love is that connection to nature. With all this glass, you can do that. This is a house that we found for a client. He was looking to do a new house, and we found this house. I said, you got to buy this a lot. And when he saw that, he thought I was joking. And I said to him, if you don't buy it, I will buy it. So he went and he bought it.
Well, but not only that, you also told him, we will only do the project if we preserve the house.
Yes. So they wanted to, he wanted to could not see how this can be fixed. So we got a contractor, and we said we only do the project if, we can restore the house. So it's a very long lot. So we try to, this kind of the initial sketches, we're talking that we, draw by hand, but basically we try to preserve the house.
We still draw by hand. What is wrong? We still draw by hand, like Frank.
So the idea was to preserve the house, restore it, and make a connection. It was 250 feet long, and to make a connection, but also we call it the 5-yard house, because we are creating 5 yards where you can also, you go a little fast one. For me.
No, but this is for the 5 yards, so you can explain the 5 yards. Mm-hmm.
So we have, the front and all these yards here, but this is the old house that we restored, but at the same time make a bridge, kind of like a seismic joint, because the foundation moved differently, and this would be all the new house, but have these 5 yards. In the back here, there's a big, backyard from somebody else, kind of like a Japanese garden. We're using that yard to be kind of part of the house. A barrel garden. So you can go on to the next one here. So this is the connection of the old and the new, and you can see how you can go to the spaces. Those are little things that by us working together, I hate supply air grill. So this is the return air. We made this connection from the old house to the new one, and made these spaces where the mechanical room is in the other side. And it's a way to kind of like the Guggenheim, that you go low and then you go up, and that was kind of like, you can go ahead. This is just a very open room, and that was, the next one is fine. The back was like this, so you gotta go, then this is the new,
the front facade was preserved. The back was an addition, so that was the new facade became the facade into the courtyard.
So we work with Tenike landscape architects in Austin, and try to do a very simple garden, and found that where you are really connected. There's a lot of similarity to my house. You can see why they're so similar. The owner wanted to buy, I knew them, and he liked my house, and he wanted to, he just got married and wanted to buy my house. And I'm like, where am I gonna go? I don't care, just how much you want, I give you a check. And I say, no, my daughters were like 5 or 6, they will kill me if I sell the house. So I said, we'll find a lot for you. And that's even the floor is the same floor. And he was mad because we didn't design the same house. And I say, it's a different lot, different location, but it have kind of the spirit of it. And you can see, they have this, a shower outside.
This is the fifth courtyard.
Yeah, and they can go from there to the fifth courtyard. But what is important, the reason we're showing that is that it's important as architects to protect the cities. So we spend a lot of time working with the neighborhood and proving to people that you can save these old houses no matter how decrepit or bad they look. You can definitely, they're priceless. In Madrid, a 100-year-old building is nothing, but in the United States, a 100-year-old building is equivalent to a 3,000-old building in Europe. So we need to protect the heritage. And that's one of the biggest challenges we have in Austin today, is trying to convince developers and people to save their heritage. And it's very important to keep doing that. So go ahead, Juan.
Okay, so next thing that we talk about, the elements of nature that are particularly important to Austin, the topography, the trees, but the one thing that is important is also the water. So when you look at this map that's showing the floodplains and the amount of creeks and the Colorado River, so Austin is another city that had to react and had to adapt to that water as a problem and as a benefit, obviously not only from the point of view of the beauty that it brings, but also from the problems that it creates. So the relationship of the city with its creeks has been traditionally very important. It's also probably the source of this environmental mind that Austin has, that they protect the creeks. Barton Springs is one of the jewels of Austin. Probably many people in Austin would think that this is one of the places that they would choose if they had to pick one place in Austin. For me, it's amazing. I go to swim there. Sometimes I swim at night. They open until 10 in the evening. So you can go there in the middle of the winter when it's 30 degrees and you go in the water and the water is the same temperature. And yeah, it's very zen-like for me to swim there at night by myself, in the pool. The water is cold, but it's not as cold as you think when you are in 30-degree temperature outside. It's actually pretty warm when you are inside. But Miguel doesn't believe me. He's from the Caribbean, so everything is just like super cold even in the summer. He will never go in. But but what I'm trying to say is that it took a lot of effort. This is in the heart of the city, in the center of the city. So to preserve this, the city has to create a consciousness about how this is important and why do we need to protect it and how we protect it and how do we protect the filtration and the aquifer and the flooding. And so all this is part of the what makes Austin what it is, and obviously the ability to control the river became absolutely critical. And I don't know if, Coy, are you here, the landscape architect that is part of the forum? Is he not here? I had dinner with him yesterday and we were talking about, oops, I didn't do anything.
No, this for him trying to let's see. Okay.
So a landscape architect, right? He was at the dinner yesterday. He was part of this project, and I was having dinner with him saying, this is the most significant project in Austin history. What it meant for the city, Town Lake, as the river that was basically a wild river that was flooding, it created a lot of problems. Obviously, you cannot develop the area, and I know that you have a lot of, some of the same issues with the Trinity and what to do with it. What happened in Austin, it was amazing. Basically, the LCRA created this dam system, and all of a sudden, the Town Lake that people now go there and feel like it's been there forever, it was not there in the 1960s. So this is Lady Bird Johnson creating this, and this environment that you see now, people don't believe that this is all man-made in the sense that it was basically, there were no trees there, not that long ago. Now it's one of the wildest areas. You have a lab from UT that is a lab of a lot of value because 70 years has been preserved. So, but all this is one of the things that makes Austin very attractive: the water, the trees, and the people. So we
and our offices are on there.
Yeah, our office. Sorry, what is it? Yeah, it's right there. Yeah, and Miguel lives walking distance. So this is basically an amenity for the entire city. It connects the east, the west. Even from the point of view of the segregation issues that Austin has always had. This is a connector. It connects everybody. It's one of the most successful, I think, open public spaces that I know.
I still have a problem coming from the Caribbean, that this is a lake. I mean, it's not.
It's a river. For me, it's more like a river.
More like a river, but the lake.
Yeah, but it is.
But definition of lake and river and creek.
Yeah, when the river becomes a lake, we have different words in Spanish for a dam, river, and a lake. So that's why probably it's coming from. But think about this: the trees and the water, and how I always tell people, like, imagine one morning you get up and there are no trees or no water in Austin. It would be a nightmare. And so the character of Austin is very much revolving around that. We organized an exhibit in Graz in Austria last year that is now traveling in Europe. And we organized the exhibit around these three themes: trees, water, and people. And this is how we try to organize our work in terms of the connection with these aspects of the city.
It's in Malaga now, so if you go to Malaga this summer, you can go see the exhibition.
It's going to be in another city soon. But in any case, so the town lake was part of a big infrastructure project that created a series of lakes in Austin. Many of you probably know Austin well, and you know that town lake is the one in the center of the city. Lake Austin created 23 miles of frontage. That is an incredible amenity for the city. Obviously, no wonder so many people from all over the world, have discovered that it's a great place to be. And obviously, this was very accessible for a lot of people. Is becoming very, very pricey because people have discovered that it's a very beautiful environment when the water is always at the same level. So this relationship with the water and nature is evident in any of these projects. It's another project that we went to visit recently, and it's beautiful to see how the trees are taking over. And this is another residence that we did there that is not in the book. It came after the book was published, and is showing that connection of the waterline, the shoreline, with the ability to.
Can you go back? It's an interesting property because we have the lake, and then the house, but also have a lot of land. There's this horse. These are horses. I don't know if you see one. This is an area that have mountains, horses, and the lake. So we have to created the path how you will come from the street all the way there. So it's a long sequence of how you get to the house. That was very interesting. Can you go back? Sorry, Juan. But I think it's good, as you approach here with the cars, this will be the house. So because we know it, we can see, but they don't know. The house is a U-shape, so you will have a courtyard. So when you see other slides, you understand. Courtyard, and then you have that pool, all this looking at the lake, a guest house, and the boat dock that we're going to show you too.
Yeah, we're going to show a few images. The pool that Miguel mentioned, and the transparency. Obviously, we want to take advantage of that beautiful space and beautiful connection with a beautiful site. So that's the courtyard that Miguel was saying, and we wanted that transparency go through in the courtyard all the way to the water. It's corten steel on the outside. We like to try different things from project to project in terms of materials. The master bedroom is upstairs. Everything is very much open, and this is the living room, the kitchen.
The dog.
The dog. Happy. It's very good for posing, those type of dogs. The second floor, this is the bedroom. The owner was very adamant about protecting all the trees. So this tree was, the one on top was very close to touching the building, but so far it has not damaged the building. But these are beautiful pecans that were there. So again, the water, the trees, you try to, when you get this kind of site, you try to not mess it up because it's so beautiful already that you try to enhance it. And in the water, this is the boat dock Miguel mentioned. We, for example, in this case, we tried
This one in the back is the one we did.
Yeah.
But sometimes people ask, how do you come up with this idea? We had a different boat dock, and the client was still too expensive. At some point, you get tired of that, and we say, okay, we're going to do it the Alberti way, which is if you take one of these things out, the things fall. So we cannot remove anything. So we came out with this structural, we call it the W dock because it's like a W. And we try to do an interesting structure, but in a way where you cannot take anything away from that otherwise. And that's how we did the tower in the Formula One, you'll see. But it's a way that we're trying to do this platform that is very simple, kind of with the curtain steel similar to the house, but it's a very simple structure. It cannot be any thinner. It cannot be any,
We like to be efficient. We love structure. In Spain, structure is very much part of the architectural education, and we love to understand structure and to control the structure and work with very good structural engineers. But in this case, what Miguel is saying, we basically saying how light can you make it? This is one of the beautiful things about steel. The lighter it is, the cheaper it is, because it's basically a material that is measured by tonnage. So making the design efficient is making it also more cost effective. So in this case, it's as light as it gets. And you can see that the idea is also that it becomes very connected. So not only in Austin we find beautiful sites like this. This is in Texas. In Dallas.
Here.
In Dallas. This is the Kessler neighborhood. So a lot of people say, what is this in the middle of no, this is in a relatively normal neighborhood. And it is, well, you know that pretty well. It's a very traditional neighborhood here. And so we did this house and the goal was to get above the tree canopy, a little bit like those pyramids in Tikal. So we wanted to get above the canopy, so that's why we call it the vertical house. This is the sketch that we did on the fly back to visit the site with the owner the first time. It was in the airplane flying back, and it's amazing that we still sketch by hand, we do the details by hand, so we love to draw by hand, and the hand sketch still captures the ideas better than any computer program. And so this is the house built, and you can see that it's very similar to what the sketch was. This is the thinking about how to build it. That's the thinker, the builder, right? So we are very interested in understanding how it's going to be put together. So the whole structure is captured in this sketch. It was very, very similar to what eventually was built.
But I think I want to kind of explain a little bit this. Datum engineers, I think anybody from Datum here or not? In the back.
Oh.
Yeah, that's what. Yes, I know he's there. He knows this project. They did this project with us, and what was interesting is, can you go back one?
Yes.
The owner.
Back, no?
Back, yeah. There's no columns anywhere. There's no columns. So you say, how you hold that? We work with them and say, we want no columns. The owner would say, I don't want any mullions. I don't want anything like that. So the only mullions we have is the door, in there. But the idea is that we use the screen, the sunscreen, to be the supporter. Each element of each one of these will hold the structure with a plate that will connect to the angle. So the floor structure will be held by each one of these outside. So there's an angle in here that is connected to this post. Many times you see a building that is all glass and you see the little round columns in the corner. You've seen that. That's how it's done. So I think this was a very creative, unique way to do it. We like to challenge. They don't need much challenge to do that. They're amazing. We wanted to make this as thin as possible, so to be able to get in there, the air conditioning, the structure, everything that you need to make it work, to get it to that part. So it's part of it is the idea of doing this tower with glass, but at the same time, how you make that happen to the next level, and that's what.
And you can see that idea of living close to nature. So for this owner, it was very important. And then the idea that you have this garden, that you have this oasis, this connection with nature in your private, world in the middle of the city, is a unique opportunity, because Dallas has a lot of similarities to Austin in that regard. So the house is very compact, but it's very vertical. You can see the screen, and it has stone in the back, so the living room feels like it's basically around this beautiful set of trees. This is what you see from that living room, and then when you get to the roof, you start seeing above the tree canopy, and you see the bridge there, and you can see that this is a little bit that moment where you get above the canopy, like in those pyramids. So we've done this before in other projects, and this is something that is very important for us, scale and context. So for example, this is another project that we did in Austin. And this is very typical in magazines. You try to make your project feel like it's the only one in the there's no one else. You Photoshop anything that looks like it can. And in our case, when we did the book, we say, no, we want to show, when people look at this, say, oh my God, what is this site in the middle? And you say, no, this site is surrounded by houses. It's in the middle of a neighborhood with a lot of houses around. So we wanted to do, we did all these drawings for the book to show the character of the neighborhoods. So we did these 10-acre windows into the neighborhoods, and we wanted to show, obviously, the beautiful photographs. They show this landscape city. You can see that that's the city. It's not a park. You're seeing basically where people live, and you're seeing these, but also drawings that tell you, yes, there's a house on either side, and we don't mind to show you that there's a house on either side, and we're trying to do the drawings that tell you how we resolve the site. This has this wedge, and so these drawings became very important for us in the book to show that yes, there's a courtyard here, why the courtyard, how they work. The drawings, we put a lot of time in making.
This is a beam, is a full beam, because it's not touching the root of the trees. So it's a foundation here and one the other, and it's all spanning like 40-foot beam.
Because in a landscape city, you protect the trees. This is something that people from outside Texas cannot believe when I tell people in New York or in Spain or in Europe. When we were in Austria for the opening of the exhibition, I remember that the head of planning of the city of Grass could not believe that in Austin you cannot cut a tree that you plant in your own property. It's almost against these ideas that people have in Texas. You have freedom to do.
It's less than 18 inches.
Exactly. So, but you plant the tree, and after a few years you want to cut it, you cannot cut it. And because they're important, so no wonder you have that canopy. So there's a very strict rules about what you can do or not next to the tree. So protecting trees is an urban design idea. It's an urban design rule. A lot of times we think, oh, that's not in urban design. It is urban design. And I think it's very important to do for the character. So the idea of this became part of the book, and we decided we want to show that character. This is Miguel's house again. So we pair in the book a photograph of one project with 2 drawings of each house showing 10 acres of the neighborhood, and then a close-up of each house showing the actual context around it. Rather than hiding the context, showing the context. Almost a taxonomy of the...
And my house fits in many people's living room. So,
okay, don't complain, Miguel. It's a very nice house. Don't complain. So, but you can see it was almost like a taxonomy of the whole city, because we had neighborhoods from 10 different decades, from the 1890s, from the 1920s, from the 1940s. There's another one on the lake, the 1940s, and we had how many units per acre. So you show different levels of, density, different projects with different kind of a photograph, and then a drawing in plan at the same scale, and a drawing at the same scale of a close-up of each house. So you can see this one adapting to the topography and the trees.
So all the drawings are the same scale?
Yeah, yeah.
So when you can compare?
Yeah, and it
That
says...
my house fits in people's living room, but go ahead.
Not quite, Miguel. But 1950s, this one, this is 96. This is actually my house. That is basically a restoration of an existing house. So we wanted to show this is from the 1970s, I think. So each neighborhood has a different character, a different density. And we wanted this to be part of the book, something that is not very commonly shown. And so the books, they took a long time, but the drawings are very important for us. This is another residential project showing, you can see that we did it chronologically also, and also with less and less density as you get to a site that, for example, takes over the 10 acres. So the 10 acres is a single house, as opposed to the other ones that have maybe 30 houses. So that's the one you were saying, Miguel, right? You can fit your house. Still, you cannot fit it in the living room.
Yeah, you can.
So this is basically this landscape city concept, right? So when we think about the city needs other things, and so there's an idea that the city needs to be complemented with the compact city as well. So we have asked this question to ourselves, and in many forums we have discussed, can we have it both ways? And the answer is yes. We think you can. You can preserve the landscape city. You can build a compact city in tandem with the protection. So this is, for example, an op-ed. I've written several op-eds about this in newspapers, in magazines. This is in Austin newspaper about motivating our leaders, our city council, to say, yes, we can. You don't need to give up one to get the other one. You can preserve and you can basically maintain the character and the DNA of the city while you incorporate another way of living. So there's nothing wrong with having both. And this is a challenge, and it's not easy to do, but this is something that we have been advocating for a long time, because the cities need that private space, but they need also the public dimension. And the public dimension forces us to think about how to make streets that are better, more pedestrian-oriented, buildings that have public spaces, places to gather, places to have iconic elements that make places memorable. So we have had the chance, and we're going to show very quickly some of the projects at the scale of this compact city concept that have been part of our last 15 years. For example, the first one that we want to show is LifeWorks in East Austin. This is the traditionally segregated part of the city, has been very abandoned by the city for many years, and now it's being brought back to life. So this is a very nonprofit, very inexpensive building for people that are coming out of the foster care and very, very abused children. So we wanted to do a building that had certain kind of the director, and you, Miguel, you may explain it better, because she was fantastic.
It's a non-profit organization. We almost don't do the job because for some reason we do things upside down. We get a civil engineer to do a plan, and then they call the architects. So they had a civil engineer with a plan, with the parking in the front, and they already paid the guy and everything. We're good to go. And we say, no, we're not doing that. So I said, no, you have to put the parking. And we say, no, you have to give something to the city. And that's something that we're fighting every day. And that's why we don't do many projects for developers that are not conscious about the city, and they're just greedy about maximizing something without giving something back. So in here, we were able to convince the organization that there will be a better neighborhood if they will put the parking in the back and do a more of a soft, walk in there. So those are, go to the next one, Juan. Those just basic, it's a nonprofit organization. There were three, this is the three colors, there were three groups that got together into one, and we were able to work with them to make this happen.
But this is a building that is generous, is friendly to the neighborhood. It creates a space that is saying you can walk along this porch.
And symbolically, the columns means like all the supporters, kind of like what you have here for the forum. All the people that are holding this place together becomes the arcade that get the citizens in.
So, for example, in Monterrey, Mexico, is very similar to Austin. It's a city that is a landscape city that is learning to build higher density. So, for example, in this project, again, we won this in a competition, and it was because we were able to convince the developer that they needed to give something at the street level. So it's a tower with apartments, office, 2 levels of retail, and the most important thing for us was, how do you make this a better city? It's a corner. These were warehouses, abandoned, decrepit warehouses, terrible conditions, and we basically said, no, we need to create a place for people to gather, and you're going to give up space. And the developer was thinking about it for a while, and eventually says, yes, let's do it. So all this corner and all along the whole length of the building, we were able to create a space that is basically given to the city. It's not rentable, right? So they could have brought the retail all the way to the edge. We say, no, give a space. People don't need to pay to sit in those steps. People can have a coffee there, but there's a bus stop there. So there's a desire for the city to be better after every project.
So they're like in Austin is happening. Our sidewalks are like 4 foot wide. The Google building in Austin right now is new. It goes all the way to the street almost. So it's not understanding that the more we grow, you got to give generous sidewalks, put trees, landscape. And in the Awana group that I mentioned in the old neighborhood, we're working with developers to tell them, give something back. Your property is going to be more valuable if you give something back. So that's something that every architect, in one way or another, either through neighborhood organizations or working with city officials, can keep fighting for the city. Because yes, Austin is changing, but not all the changes are good.
This is a bad one, for example. So this is an article that I wrote in Texas Architect, you may have seen it, where to the surprise of many of us, it turns out that we could build windowless rooms. So it's shocking that in the 21st century, a progressive city like Austin is building thousands of units with basically all this new development west of campus at UT is putting thousands of students in windowless rooms like the one on the right, legally. So I'm in this campaign. I'm going to speak about this in June in the AIA convention in San Francisco, because this is happening across the world. In Toronto, we saw the story in California about the Munger Hall that is putting thousands of students in windowless rooms. It's crazy that the profession is not up in arms saying we cannot let that happen. If you think about the basic goals of modern architecture, we always give dignified dwellings for people, and all of a sudden, this is a brand new building. A student of mine took me the photograph, and they're spending 10 hours a day in a Zoom call there, and when they're depressed, mental issues are off the roof in colleges, and we're putting students to live there. Just because developers said, we can do it, we're going to do it. If developers are told you cannot do it, they will not do it. And it will be end of story, like many cities, right? Madrid, Mexico City, New York, they have rules that say habitability standards don't allow you to do this. Why are we allowing this? And why the profession is not doing anything about it? It's just shocking. Maybe I'm claustrophobic, and that's why it's, but to me, it's like the idea of, hopefully we can, we need all of...
I sit next to Juan, we share an office, and he's talking to AIA presidents, AIA officials, and all that, and they're kind of pass it on to somebody. Nobody's able to commit. Even Juan was proposing to put this in TSA and was not approved, but he's going to do it in national. So now it's getting some traction, and I tell Juan, just ask this question. It's very simple. Would you send your son or daughter to college in a windowless room during COVID, for example? They don't have ventilation. Would you send it? So for me, what gave me more upset, not only that architects don't do anything about it, is that it's an economic burden, because the people that have the money would not send their son and daughter to this room, but the people that cannot afford otherwise. So it's an economic disadvantage for some people that that's their only option.
Yeah, well,
and that's what we're trying to tell developers. You have people there now because they have no other option. But as soon as they have another option, you're going to have an empty building. Think about it. So we need everybody here to continue to advocate in different subjects that you see around your neighborhood that will make your city better.
For example, this is the essence of the problem. When we did this building, office buildings have deeper plates. When developers, and the apartments are in the upper part, it's a shallower plate because you need to have windows. But when developers realize, oh, I can build now like the office building for housing, so half of the people get windows, half of the people don't. That's all the buildings that are building in West Campus now. So half of the students don't have windows because the bays are deeper, it's a more efficient building, so the developers are happy to do it. But if you tell them you cannot do it, they will not do it. In this case, this developer did it because they thought it was a good idea to have windows. Everybody agrees, but the students, like Miguel saying, don't have necessarily as many options. So this is something that, well, we're going to change topic, Miguel, because otherwise I get very, So very quickly, we're going to talk about another project.
My daughter yesterday, I found out there was she's in 7th grade. There was a blackout, okay, in the school. They could not get out of the room. There was no windows in the classroom. 2023, Austin. We're not talking. I mean,
no, we're going backward. It's a regressive
in
behavior.
Austin. I mean, my daughter, she have to flash with the phones, kids getting out. It makes no sense. It makes no sense. But anyway, yes, let's change subjects.
So, Mexican-American Culture Center. Miguel, tell them.
This is a very interesting project. We're about to start construction this summer. The drawings are out. But this Teodoro
Well, even the groundbreaking ceremony was 3 months ago.
But
politicians wanted to do it before the change of mayor and
be
council.
careful when it's being recorded. So,
but it's true.
It's the fact, right? So, Teodoro González de León, a well-known modern architect in Mexico City, was hired to do this Mexican Cultural Center 20 years ago, and they were able to do that much, and they put the footprint or how to continue. So we are doing phase 2, which is some renovations of that, but also completing the building. We're working with Tatiana Bilbao Studio from Mexico City. We did a joint venture. So it's a very interesting project that is about to start construction. So this is the existing building. They have...
Next to the water, next to the park. I mean, in the park.
What's going on?
Yeah, sorry, I go. This one. You go.
Okay, so they call this in Mexico the square, the town square is called Zócalo. So they call this the Zócalo, and you see that it's not defined. So with the team, with Tatiana and the group, we decided that we had to close this in a different way.
Define the
park. So we saw this a very quick diagram of what the existing condition, and we said we need to kind of complete the building, do some separation to the ground where you can have the Zócalo and the shade structure for them to use this space. And we're not going to get into much detail, but this kind of the rendering of the building, which we're going to connect here, have stairs. So there's going to be additional program. What they need is square footage. It's a very I think we're going like year 3 of this thing. Now we're going to start
these meetings.
Of this meeting. We have to do a lot of community engagement over again. And so, and we have some few in person. But the Mexican community in Austin distrust the government and distrust the city because they give too many promises and then they don't do it. So we work very hard to get their confidence that we've been their advocate, and they trust us 100% now, and it's a much better way because they know that we're fighting for them. So it's going to be a fantastic project. At the end of the day, it's going to be a shade structure. We're connecting urbanistically the trail with the lake. And by connecting in here, we are solving a lot of problems that the building had, and there's an art piece, sculpture. So we're going to be able to separate with the friends that have issues with homeless and crime and all that, this area, now. So go ahead, Juan. So this will be kind of, the rendering. It's a very simple building. This is, the existing structure is concrete that is prefab that they with stone chisel. So we're gonna have a white brick in an angle in there with steel columns that is kind of a contrast of what is there, but done in a very elegant way. And this shade structure is an interesting object that we're trying to do for them to have activities, music and dances, and have a shade there.
Yeah, we're studying all the different options of how to
we study how we can control where you can get light, but depending on the sunlight, we create the shadow. So,
but this is also an example of public space. I mean, for us, it's very important. This public space needs to be defined. It's very clear for the Mexican American Center what's their boundary, and they can close it at night, but they can open those big gates, and then people can come during the day from the trail. So this is another example of public space, trees, water, park, nature, and a civic function also to make this identity a strong identity for the Mexican American community.
So we basically doubling their square footage and they're doubling their programs. So it's going to be a very impacting for them. The mission.
Yeah, this is an example of another community like Dallas. Austin has a large Hindu community, and we designed this Hindu temple and school. I just want to show you there's another opportunity to do a building that is about gathering, about the opposite of what you see in your private space when you come together. And for us, it's very important to understand these cultures, understand what is important to them. This is the Swami that had a very important ceremony to do.
And this is, I love this ceremony, I was there. These are what the deities, the three deities will be. But what they're doing in here, one will be the adults, and the children, the man, the woman, and the children. They are asking the land, the earth, for forgiveness, because now we're going to put a building here that you cannot grow food. So it's a ceremony where you ask, talking about nature, understanding the importance of nature, where they are apologizing for what they're about, to do, their respect. So that's why they have the coconuts and all those things.
We created a threshold with these limestone blocks, and that's a very simple way to do ancient architecture that is basically creating boundaries, creating courtyards, creating thresholds. And the idea at the end is this: it's a place for people to come together. It's a place for people to gather. And people need those spaces. They need the private spaces, they need spaces to get together. So getting together is sometimes for these kind of reasons and for cultural reasons. So we thought that we wanted to show, even if it's very quickly, we're getting close to the end now, but this is a project that we did that never went anywhere. That is in Dallas, there's also a very strong Hindu community, and so there was the idea of creating a museum right in the heart of downtown. I don't know, this was in the news for a while, I don't know how much you know about it, but basically our idea was to design a building that it was for the collection of the promoter of the idea, is the owner of these amazing 4 blocks in the heart of downtown, very close to the Dallas Aquarium. And the idea was to create a park in relation to this civic building.
The lot is the empty lot in front of the aquarium, that also in the back is the Perot Museum, that big parking lot.
We don't know what's going to happen there, but we saw very excited about the idea of a park that it could be related to this building, so the collections will be inside, so it's a cultural amenity, but it was the dialogue of the building with that beautiful park. So this is a view from inside the building looking at that park, and you see the rest of the Dallas skyline. So it was an opportunity for us to reflect in how the city can benefit from getting this public space, which is I don't know if it's ever going to happen. Those lots are so valuable now that I don't know if it could be possible to donate them to be parks. So this is the view at night. So the idea of public space and cultural buildings is a very powerful combination for any city. So that's what we were trying to recreate here. So gathering and a street, very important in this building, is East Austin. This is for the school public district, in Austin, and it's the first time that an amenity that is it was for the whole city, was located on the east side of Austin. So the Performing Arts Center for the whole school district was placed on the east side.
What is interesting of this is where the old airport was, the Mueller Airport. So the guidelines of the urban design were such that the city was forced, or Juan used a lot of that to convince them that you don't have to do the typical Performing Arts Center, which is the building in the middle and the parking lot around. So they were for a couple of years looking for a piece of land to do the building with the parking around. So the urbanistic part, where you have a pedestrian recognition of the street and the pedestrian, was very important.
Yeah, so this became a very important landmark again in the new development in Mueller, and again at the end is a place for people to gather for something important. So this is for high schools. Our children have play here. This is for high school and middle school students.
And the director of that project called Juan was not very concerned. What was the concern?
No, it's very funny that she told me very worried. She said, Juan, I'm worried. And I said, what happened? The board is very, very worried. And I said, this is when the building was being finished, when it was like this. The board is very worried. I said, why? Because it looks too nice. And I say, what do you mean they look too nice? They think that they're going to think that we spend too much money. And I say, well, Flo, just go back and tell them that it's on time, on budget. It's just called good design. So you don't have to, you don't have to worry about it. I said, okay. And it was very, very strange, because it was like from being worried, all of a sudden it became the best thing that you could hear. So it is, okay, this is the last project we're going to show. And this is, we're going to show it very quickly, because I know that we're running out of time. We want to go back to some things that we did in the book as the last thing, but we want to show this as the last project. This is another opportunity that comes along. We're very unusual, and again, signature buildings that can become recognizable are important in cities as well, right? So cities need that moment where people can orient themselves. And we had an incredible opportunity working in this project that came a little bit out of nowhere when the news came that Austin was going to host the Formula One. And we were in charge of all the buildings around the track, which was, no one had done it, and in our case, it was a fascinating opportunity to work very quickly in the public spaces, in the tower, in the auditorium, in the grandstand, and all the ability for this to be implemented over time. It was very important for us. So we designed the main grandstand, completely ignoring the precedents. It's beautiful when you have so much pressure of time that you don't have time to dwell too much. And we created things that are unusual, to have all the restaurants, all the food outside, so you create more like a street. You create a space for shade. So there's an opportunity for this to be a place for people to enjoy spending the weekend. And obviously people gather for the races, and so there's another reason for people to gather. It could be religious, it could be educational, it could be cultural, it could be entertainment, but it's beautiful when people find those common grounds, and then the building can become a very memorable moment. So you remember that moment of being there, but the iconic element, and we give credit to the owner. He knew we need something. And we said, what about a tower? What about tower? Yes, where is the tower? Let's put it here. How tall? Well, it's 251 feet. People say, why? Because that's the way it came out when we drew it. And it is sometimes things happen. And so we had no precedent. It's beautiful when you have a project where you don't have anything in mind that is something that you're looking for. So the idea of publicness and connecting and being in a place with other people for music, this is another vision that the owner had, say, hey, we're building this whole thing, we better do something else in addition to the races. What about an amphitheater. Say, that's a great idea, let's do it. So we did it with all the equipment that was doing all the tracks. So we excavated and we did an auditorium for venue for music that has become incredibly successful. But the idea of that building as a iconic element has become.
There's a lot to it that are very interesting, and that is the idea of the art, but also how you make this happen, how we convince the client to do this thing. And one of the things we have to convince is that we cannot say that, right? He said, don't say how much it costs because people, I want them to think that.
It didn't cost that much.
But don't
so
say.
it's one of those unusual things where they say, don't tell anybody how much it costs because, I'd rather make people think that it costs more.
But basically, we come up with a system that these are pipes that are used in the old, in the old industry we can get from Houston very quickly, put it together. We did this in a shop in sections. We don't have those drawings in here, but it's another lecture. It was all come from a shop and then just assemble it with a big crane. It was done very, very quickly. This stair is a double scissor stair where we had to do a smoke test. That if there's a fire, you'll be able to get out because it was an open stair and the fire department didn't want it. So there's a lot to that than just what it is. But as an architect, you need to deal with these issues with the fire department, all that to convince them that it's able to be done on time, on budget.
Well, and what Miguel said that is very important, that the red pipes that sometimes people say, can we, contractors, sometimes they look for the thing that they can eliminate and make the project less costly or less time consuming. In this case, like Miguel is saying, everything is doing the structural work, so you cannot remove those red pipes. A lot of think, I thought the white was the structure and the red. No, the red is doing the structural work. So you want to preserve it, make it do something structural because you cannot eliminate it. So it's a good thing.
The funny thing is, one thing is that this floor is glass. So Felipe Massa, one of the Brazilian car racers, the first race, he was scared of stepping in the glass. So I thought that was so funny. Somebody who goes 300 miles per hour was scared of stepping. I was like, it's okay, it's not going to happen. But I would not get in the car with him at 300 miles per hour.
Me neither. Okay, so we want to finish with some reflections on one of the things that we also wanted to incorporate in the book. Like Miguel is saying, sketches are in the book. A lot of the projects start with freehand sketches that are in the book. But also we were very interested in doing drawings that tell the secrets, almost like how we do things. And I think these are not drawings that are part of the working drawings. We did it specifically for the drawings, almost like these didactic moments or things that we are interested in. That is the essence of this project. For example, that sketch that you saw, freehand sketch, we did a more elaborate drawing showing the guts of how that structure is working. And it shows the moment that is important in that project. For example, here in the tower, we show exactly how the tower works from the structural point of view in terms of all the elements. Very elaborate drawings. They take a lot of time. We love this type of drawings. We think there's a more beautiful type of drawings when you show the character of the building, but also how it's happening. So a stair that is hard to imagine what's going on in that inside of that stair. We are showing it. So we are not afraid of showing. This is, for example, for the modular system for the grandstand, how we develop that in 40-foot modules. This is, for example, the Hindu temple. The most important part is where the deities are located, is the light that comes from there.
We were able to do all this out of wood. I mean, it's a very, very
super inexpensive.
Inexpensive building, so we have to make it out of wood. Only a few elements that are steel.
And then we invited also Michael Sorkin wrote the introduction to the book. He died before the book was published out of COVID. COVID, unfortunately, was in that first wave of COVID in New York. What he wrote for our book is one of the last things that he wrote. And it was, very, very important for us to have people reflect on the work. So we have Michael Sorkin, we had Carlos Jimenez. He did a conversation with Miguel and myself. So we were able to bring a scholar from Spain that did a very thorough analysis. He's the one who came up with the name Building a New Arcadia. And then Nina Rappaport is an architectural critic from New York City that also was very, very good in giving insight into what she saw in our work. And then the other thing that we did that is very unique, it was risky, is we'd hire a photographer from Belgium that is called Sebastian Sudischer that had done pinhole. He uses a pinhole camera. So it came to our attention, this photographer, that these beautiful photographs, for example, remote little churches in the mountains of Spain, or mosques in the Niger Delta. So he was known for this type of photography, but he had never photographed modern architecture. So it was very risky for us, and we say, let's hire him and bring him to see what he can come up with our work. And so he had never been to the US. He came with his pinhole camera, which is a beautiful thing to see. Basically, it's a camera that has no lenses, so you cannot see what you're photographing, no filters. So we like the raw beauty of the photographs that we had seen of his work. He's basically taking photographs of things that he's not able to see in the camera, so he just knows enough.
Well, everybody knows, the old camera. What convinced me to have somebody like that is in the age of Photoshop and lies of what you see, the images, okay? Because you do a lot of, the design awards, how many design award submissions are not real? I was the chairman of the design award in New York, and I was always trying to put something. No photo has been retouched or nothing has been taken away. I think that should be in every submission. You should have what it is. But in any case, in here what I like is that this camera is what it is. There's no lenses, there's no color thing, So that's what we try to do with the building. This is what it is, there's nothing being touched. And the honesty of this photography, we wanted to portray the honesty of our work. So we'll show you a few images.
So what we're gonna do is we're gonna finish by showing you these photographs without us telling anything about the project, just letting the photos speak for themselves. So this is a selection of some of the 45 that he took and we included them in the book at the beginning and at the end, book ending the book. Very hard to include these photographs in the book, so we decided to do them without text, and that's the way we're doing here. Thank you.